Greetings, adventurers of Middle-earth. Today we embark on a journey deep into the heart of Tolkien's legendarium, unraveling the mysteries and stories surrounding the Rings of Power. These artifacts are more than just objects. They carry the weight of ambition, tragedy, and the unyielding spirit of the free peoples of Middle-earth. From the secret forges of Eregion to the fiery depths of Mount Doom, every ring has a tale to tell. But before we dive into these incredible stories, let me ask you, what is it about Tolkien's world that keeps drawing you back? Is it the timeless themes of friendship and sacrifice? Or perhaps the way every character, no matter how small, feels integral to the fate of the world? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what makes Middle-earth special for you. Today we'll explore the origins, powers, and fates of the legendary Rings of Power. Each section will delve into a specific aspect based on Tolkien's texts, including the Lord of the Rings, the Silmarillion, and unfinished tales. Together, we'll uncover the allure and danger that these rings brought to their bearers. If you're a fan of Tolkien's work, or just someone curious about the magic and meaning behind the Rings of Power, stay with us. There's something here for everyone. Whether you've read the books, seen the films, or are diving into Middle-earth for the first time, ready your hearts, sharpen your minds, and let's step into a world of wonder and peril. And hey, if you enjoy this content, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Every bit of support helps us continue to explore the stories that shape our imaginations. Now, without further delay, let's begin with the origins of the Rings of Power. In the Second Age of Middle-earth, the elves of Eregion crafted wonders that would echo through history, but none more famous or infamous than the Rings of Power. Guided by their unparalleled craftsmanship and driven by an insatiable thirst for knowledge, the elves sought to preserve the beauty of their world. It was during this time that Annatar, the so-called Lord of Gifts, arrived. Claiming to be a messenger of the Valar, he offered wisdom in ring-making, concealing his true identity as Sauron the Deceiver. Annatar's teachings were seductive. He spoke of preserving life and protecting Middle-earth against decay, ideals that resonated deeply with the elves. Celebrimbor, the grandson of Feanor and leader of the Gwaith'i Myrddin, became Annatar's most trusted pupil. Together, they harnessed the magic of ringcraft, forging objects of immense power that could preserve and enhance the beauty of the world. The forging process itself was a blend of art and magic. The sounds of hammers striking anvils filled the air of Eregion, as the elves worked tirelessly, blending precious metals with their inherent magic. These rings weren't just ornaments. They were imbued with enchantments that could bend time, slow decay, and enhance the bearer's natural abilities. But little did they know, Annatar's guidance came with a sinister purpose. Sauron's deception lay in the crafting of the One Ring. Forged in secret within the fires of Mount Doom, the One Ring held the power to control all the others, binding their bearers to his will. With this master ring, Sauron planned to dominate Middle-earth, turning its free peoples into his thralls. This betrayal marked the beginning of a long and bitter struggle for freedom against his shadow. The elves soon discovered the truth when Sauron put on the One Ring. Celebrimbor and his kin sensed its malevolent presence. They realized they had been deceived. But it was too late to undo the enchantments binding their creations to Sauron's will. To save their greatest works from corruption, Celebrimbor hid the three most powerful rings, Vilya, Nenya, and Narya, keeping them out of Sauron's grasp. While the great rings of power dominate the stories of Middle-earth, the lesser rings hold their own mysteries. These experimental creations were the precursors to the more potent rings forged by the elves of Eregion during their early attempts at ring-making. Though often overlooked, these rings carried unique enchantments that reflected the boundless creativity and the hidden dangers of their makers. The lesser rings were not forged with the same grand ambitions as their more famous counterparts. Instead, they were used by the elves to hone their craft, exploring the possibilities of magic and metal. However, even these trifles, as Tolkien called them, carried power that could be perilous to mortals. Their enchantments varied. Some granted subtle abilities like slowing decay, while others might have had more experimental effects. One of the more fascinating abilities tied to the lesser rings was the power of invisibility. This theme, explored in The Hobbit with Bilbo's discovery of a seemingly insignificant ring, hints that some lesser rings may have held similar powers. The question arises, were these abilities intentional or the byproduct of the elves' experiments? Either way, they add a layer of intrigue to the tale of ringcraft. Despite their less potent nature, the lesser rings could still corrupt those who bore them. Mortals, in particular, were at risk. Unlike the elves, who crafted the rings with a blend of artistry and purpose, men were drawn to their power without understanding the consequences. This imbalance between what the rings were and how they were used foreshadowed the tragedies that would follow. Interestingly, Tolkien left much of the story of the Lesser Rings shrouded in mystery. Their exact number and fate are unknown, adding an air of suspense to their legacy. Were they all lost to time? Or do some still linger in the forgotten corners of Middle-earth? Such questions continue to spark debates among Tolkien enthusiasts. The story of the Great Rings begins with their division among the free peoples of Middle-earth, elves, dwarves, and men. These 20 rings of power, crafted with unparalleled skill, were designed to enhance the natural strengths and desires of their bearers. But the way they were distributed reveals much about the intentions of both the elves who created them and Sauron, who sought to control them. 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky. The elves, being the most skilled and wise, received 3 rings untouched by Sauron's hand: Vilya, Nenya, and Narya. These rings were meant for preservation, healing, and protection. Unlike the others, they were hidden away from Sauron's influence, a safeguard that would later prove crucial in resisting his domination. 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone. The 7 dwarven rings were gifted to the leaders of the dwarven clans. Though they could not corrupt the dwarves in the same way they did men, these rings stoked a dangerous greed in their bearers. Treasure hoards grew vast, but so did the tragedies that came with them. From the awakening of Durin's Bane in Moria to Smaug's attack on Erebor. 9 for mortal men doomed to die. Men received the majority of the Great Rings, reflecting Sauron's deeper plan. These 9 rings granted power and longevity, but ultimately enslaved their bearers to Sauron's will. The men who wore them became the Nazgul, wraiths bound to the One Ring and forever lost to the shadows. Finally, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne. This Master Ring, forged in secret, was the keystone of Sauron's scheme. Its power to dominate the other rings and their bearers made it the most dangerous artifact in Middle-earth. With it, Sauron could extend his will over the free peoples, a vision of complete control that became his undoing. The distribution of the rings wasn't random. It was a calculated move by Sauron to exploit the weaknesses of each race. For the elves, it was their desire to preserve and create. For the dwarves, their love of treasure. For men, their hunger for power and fear of death. Each group was given what they most desired, and in turn, their desires became their downfall. Among the great rings, the 9 given to mortal men tell one of the most tragic tales in Middle-earth. These rings were gifts of power, offering their bearers immense strength, influence, and an extension of their natural lifespans. But beneath the promises of greatness lay a trap, one that would lead to the complete enslavement of their souls by Sauron. Initially, the 9 rings seemed like blessings to the men who received them. Kings and warriors rose to power, their realms expanding, and their names etched into history. The rings amplified their deepest desires: crowns, glory, and dominion over others. But as time passed, the cost of wielding these powerful artifacts began to reveal itself. One of the most alluring powers of the 9 was the ability to become invisible. This allowed their bearers to slip into shadows, observing and acting without being seen. However, this power came with a terrible consequence. Over time, the line between the physical world and the wraith world blurred. The men became increasingly detached from their mortal forms, walking unseen but also unanchored to life as they knew it. This process, known as the fading, marked the beginning of their transformation. Gradually, their physical bodies decayed, and they became bound to the One Ring's will. Their invisibility became permanent, and they were no longer men, but wraiths, servants of Sauron, known as the Nazgul. Their existence became a haunting paradox. They were immortal, yet they had lost everything that made them alive. Sauron's mastery over the 9 rings was absolute. Through the One Ring, he controlled their every thought and action. The Nazgul became his most feared servants, spreading terror across Middle-earth. Clad in dark cloaks and wielding the power of dread, they served as Sauron's enforcers, hunting the enemies of their master and searching endlessly for the One Ring. The 7 rings crafted for the Dwarf Lords present a fascinating tale of resilience, greed, and unintended consequences. Unlike men, the dwarves were far less susceptible to the corruption of Sauron. Their unyielding spirits, forged in the fires of Aule's creation, proved resistant to domination. However, the 7 rings managed to exploit a different vulnerability: their insatiable lust for treasure. When the dwarves accepted these rings, they were granted immense wealth and prosperity. Their hoards of gold grew beyond imagination, and their subterranean halls became symbols of grandeur and might. Yet this newfound prosperity came at a cost. The rings ignited an overwhelming greed in their bearers, consuming their thoughts and driving their actions. It wasn't long before their desire for gold eclipsed all other joys. This greed, although distinct from the corruption faced by men, had devastating consequences. The dwarves' relentless mining and hoarding drew the attention of darker forces. In Erebor, the great dragon Smaug was attracted by the wealth of the Lonely Mountain, bringing destruction to Thorin's people. Similarly, in Khazad-dûm, Their pursuit of Mithril awakened Durin's Bane, a Balrog that would drive the dwarves from their ancient halls. Sauron's original intent with the Seven Rings was to bring the dwarves under his control, but this plan largely failed. Their innate resilience protected them from becoming wraiths or falling completely under his will. However, their greed still served his purposes. The chaos and destruction brought by their insatiable hunger for wealth weakened their kingdoms, making them less effective in the fight against Sauron's growing power. Of the Seven Rings, some were lost to history, others were consumed by dragons, and a few were reclaimed by Sauron himself. The story of their fates mirrors the decline of the dwarves' great kingdoms. What was once a source of pride and strength became the catalyst for their downfall, leaving them fractured and diminished in the face of Middle-earth's greater conflict. The three rings for the Elven kings stand apart from the others, both in their purpose and their origin. Unlike the Nine and the Seven, these rings were crafted without Sauron's direct involvement. Celebrimbor, a master craftsman and the grandson of Feanor, forged them in secret, imbuing them with powers of preservation, healing, and protection. They were created not for domination, but to preserve the beauty and harmony of Middle-earth. The names of the three rings, Vilya, Nenya, and Narya, reflect their unique powers. Vilya, the Ring of Air, bore a sapphire set in a gold band and was regarded as the most potent of the three. It was entrusted to Elrond in Rivendell, where its healing abilities and power to shield were put to great use. Nenya, the Ring of Water, adorned with a white stone of adamant, was given to Galadriel. Its magic enhanced Lothlorien, preserving its timeless beauty. Lastly, Narya, the Ring of Fire, was entrusted to Círdan the Shipwright, who later gave it to Gandalf. Its flames inspired courage and kindled hope in the hearts of others. Though Sauron never touched the three rings, they were not entirely free from his influence. The forging of these rings still relied on knowledge imparted by Annatar, Sauron's guise. As a result, they were indirectly bound to the One Ring. If Sauron regained the one, his dominion would extend over the three as well, corrupting even their purest intentions. The bearers of the three rings wielded them wisely, often in subtle ways. Elrond used Vilya to create a sanctuary in Rivendell, a refuge from the darkness spreading across Middle-earth. Galadriel's use of Nenya maintained the ethereal beauty of Lothlorien, allowing it to stand as a beacon of hope and resistance. Gandalf wielded Narya not for personal power, but to inspire others, kindling bravery in even the most desperate times. One of the most remarkable features of the three rings was their ability to remain hidden. Unlike the other rings, their bearers could shield them from detection, even from Sauron. This invisibility of the rings themselves proved crucial in preserving their secrecy and ensuring they were not used recklessly in the struggle against the Dark Lord. The One Ring, forged in the fires of Mount Doom, stands as the ultimate symbol of power and corruption in Tolkien's legendarium. Crafted by Sauron in secret, it was designed to dominate all other rings of power and their bearers. Unlike the others, the One Ring was not adorned with gems or intricate designs. Its unassuming appearance belied the immense power it contained. Sauron poured a significant portion of his own power and will into the creation of the One Ring. This act bound his life force to the ring, ensuring that as long as it existed, so would he. Its inscription, visible only when heated, read, "One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them." These words encapsulated Sauron's vision of absolute domination over Middle-earth. The ring's power was not just in controlling the others, but in amplifying the abilities of its bearer. It granted invisibility, heightened senses, and an expanded awareness of the world. Yet these gifts came at a cost. The One Ring carried an irresistible malice, slowly corrupting its bearer and turning them into a shadow of their former self. The longer one held the ring, the harder it became to resist its influence. The ring's influence extended beyond its bearers. It had a will of its own, seeking to return to Sauron whenever separated from him. This was evident in its betrayal of Isildur, slipping from his finger as he tried to escape the orcs at the Anduin River. Over the centuries, the ring manipulated those around it, such as Smeagol, who murdered his cousin Deagol for it, and Boromir, whose desperation to save Gondor led him to try to take it from Frodo. Despite its immense power, the One Ring had a single vulnerability. It could only be destroyed in the fires of Mount Doom, where it was forged. This weakness became the cornerstone of the quest to defeat Sauron. The ring's destruction was no simple task, as its allure made even the most steadfast heroes falter. Frodo himself, tasked with its destruction, succumbed to its power in the end, only for Gollum's intervention to seal its fate. The story of the Rings of Power is deeply intertwined with the themes of power, ambition, and the corrupting influence they wield. From their creation to their ultimate fates, these rings reveal how the desire for control and immortality can lead even the noblest of beings to ruin. Tolkien masterfully uses these artifacts to explore the moral struggles that define Middle-earth. At their core, the Rings of Power represent the allure of unchecked power. Sauron's promise of preservation and enhancement tempted the elves, who sought to protect their lands and cultures from the passage of time. Yet this desire to preserve became their vulnerability, allowing Sauron to manipulate their creations and set the stage for his dominance. This theme resonates strongly with the idea that even noble intentions can lead to dangerous outcomes when power is involved. For the bearers of the Nine Rings, power was a double-edged sword. These men who sought glory and dominion were consumed by the very gifts they craved. Their transformation into the Nazgul shows how ambition can strip individuals of their humanity, turning them into instruments of the very forces they once sought to control. The Nine Rings demonstrate that power, when unbalanced by wisdom and restraint, leads to self-destruction. The dwarves, though resilient to Sauron's direct influence, were not immune to the corrupting effects of their rings. The greed ignited by the Seven Rings led to the downfall of their greatest realms. This aspect highlights another layer of corruption, the way material wealth and ambition can erode a society's foundations, even without external domination. The dwarves' tale serves as a warning about the dangers of greed and overreach. The One Ring, however, embodies corruption in its purest form. Its power was not just in controlling others, but in warping the very soul of its bearer. Frodo, Sam, Boromir, and even Gollum each displayed how the ring exploited their deepest fears and desires, twisting them toward ruin. The One Ring's influence extended beyond physical possession, ensnaring the minds of all who came near it, showing that power corrupts not only those who wield it, but also those who covet it. Ultimately, the destruction of the One Ring and the liberation of Middle-earth offer a glimmer of hope. It is not power that redeems the world, but the courage to resist it. This central theme reminds us that the greatest victories often come not from the strong or powerful, but from those with the will to let go. The story of the Rings of Power is a saga of ambition, betrayal, and resilience, a testament to the enduring allure and peril of power. From the elves' desire to preserve their world, to the dwarves' unrelenting greed, to the mortal men's tragic fall, each ring carries a tale that echoes across the ages. And at the heart of it all lies the One Ring, an artifact so potent that it reshaped the fate of Middle-earth. Tolkien's world is not just about grand battles and epic quests. It's a reflection of the choices we make and the consequences they carry. The rings, with their promises of strength and immortality, challenge us to consider our own desires and vulnerabilities. What would you do if offered such power? Could you resist its temptation, or would you, like so many in Middle-earth, fall under its spell? These stories remind us of the strength found in unlikely heroes. Frodo, Sam, and others like them did not possess great power, but they carried immense courage. They remind us that it's not the mightiest weapon or the strongest will that saves the world. It's the ability to hold on to hope and resist the corrupting call of power. Now it's your turn to weigh in. What's your favorite part of the story of the Rings of Power? Do you think the elves were right to create them? Or was their ambition their greatest mistake? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I can't wait to hear your perspectives. If you enjoyed this journey through Middle-earth, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Your support helps us continue exploring the incredible world Tolkien created. And if you know someone who'd love this deep dive into the Rings of Power, share this video with them and invite them to join the discussion. Thank you for being part of this adventure. Until next time, may the stars shine brightly on your path, and may you always find hope, even in the darkest of times. Farewell, fellow adventurers.